Hey y'all, welcome to Criminally Creative, a podcast about my various creative endeavors. This is episode 11, and today is Saturday, January 19th, 2019. My name is Susan, I'm your host. You can find me on Ravelry as Legal Eagle and on Instagram as Criminally Creative Podcast. I also have a Ravelry group for the podcast, which is Criminally Creative Podcast, and where I post all the show notes from each episode. And there's also an introductions thread, so if you're watching, I would appreciate it if you would go and introduce yourself and let me know that you're watching. You can also always comment here on YouTube, and that's fine. I will try to respond to comments there, but I just tend to be on Ravelry a lot more than YouTube. So anyway, speaking of Ravelry, like I said, we do have an introduction thread there, and before I forget, we have had one introduction since the last time, which was a while ago. So I wanted to welcome Julia, who is, and I looked up her Doonan Knits. Julia happens to be my husband's cousin, but she lives in a totally different part of the country from me, and so I believe we have met once or twice, but we do not see each other very often. Julia is also a very wonderful designer. She has designed several patterns within the past year. If you go back and look in my projects back, I think about February of last year, I did her Dream Lake cowl. I always feel like I have to articulate that word cowl because when I say it regularly with my accent, it sounds like something else. I don't know. Anyway, she also has a Dream Lake shawl that is similar in motif to the cowl if you're not a cowl person. I have not had a chance to do the shawl yet, but I do plan to do that eventually. And a couple of other patterns she has that are beautiful that I have not had a chance to knit as well. Her mother as well is a beautiful knitter, and she seems to show her pictures on Facebook more than I have seen them on Ravelry. But anyway, so thank you, Julia, for introducing yourself. And again, if you have not gone and introduced yourself, as many of you have not, there's not a ton of you out there, but only 3 of you have introduced yourself, so I know there's a few more than that. I would appreciate it if you would go to the Ravelry group and introduce yourself. Excuse me. I will start by explaining why it has been almost 2 months since I have podcast. I really had every intention of doing another podcast before Christmas, but as you can, there will be some coughing and sniffling and everything. I have been sick pretty much since December 12th. I've been through 2 rounds of antibiotics, steroids. We pretty much canceled Christmas and New Year's this year because everybody was sick, and I seem to be really hanging on to it a long time. So I apologize for any coughing. If I have a major coughing fit, I will try to edit it out, but otherwise there may be too much of the occasional small cough to actually get it all out, so I apologize in advance for any of that. I also may have to take a sip of water occasionally because I'm still a little hoarse from all the coughing. So anyway, for the most part, sick is the reason that I have not been back in almost 2 months. I just, some days I didn't even have the energy really to knit much. So fortunately, things just seem to be getting better. I'm still coughing a little bit, but we're hopefully all in the mend. Anyway, excuse me. So we did have a very nice, quiet Christmas and New Year's. Like I said, we did have on December 15th, my parents and my brother and his family and our kids, we all got together because my parents were leaving on the 20th to go out to California to my sister's for Christmas. So we did do that. That was when I was really starting to get sick, and unfortunately as a result of that I made my father sick. But the next weekend we were supposed to go to our daughter's for Christmas, and she called the night before and said her son was now sick and had pink eye as a result. My husband and I were both not feeling well by that point, and so we kind of canceled that. My husband and I had a very nice quiet Christmas to ourselves. We thought we were getting better. He got better. I got it again. We ended up canceling New Year's with our friends because we didn't want to get them sick. And so the fortunate thing was I had already planned to take most of that time off work. I'd planned to take all of Christmas week off work. And I had planned to go into work on January 3rd and 4th, but I ended up staying home for that as well. But at least I didn't have every morning to have to do the, oh, do I feel like going to work today type thing, because I had already pretty much decided to take it off. But anyway, enough about that. It was a nice break, but unfortunately it was not the break that we hoped for. So, or that I hoped for, at least. Anyway, I am about done with all my medications. My ear is still all stopped up, and, you know, like I said, my voice is still a hoarse. I'm still coughing a little bit, but I hope that the worst of it is over. That was a long explanation. I may cut some of that out, but we'll see. Anyway, let's get on to the verdicts. I have several verdicts that were done for Christmas presents and have already been given to the recipients. So I don't have those here to show you. And as a result, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about them. I'll just tell you briefly, because I'm going to insert in pictures after this of each of the items, what those items were. Excuse me. And if you're interested about the details, the yarns I use, the needle size I use, that sort of stuff, all of that is on my Ravelry pages for each of the projects. Excuse me. So I did finish the latte baby coat for my youngest grandson, Alden. I also finished another 7 hats, I believe. I did the fall harvest hat for my granddaughter, Cadence. And then I made another hat for my grandson, Alden, and one for my grandson, Carter. Both of those were not Ravelry patterns or anything. They're just, one was just a ribbed hat for Carter, and the other was kind of a weird rib thing I kind of came up with on my own when I decided I didn't want to do straight rib for Alden. I did the frost hat for my youngest niece, Caroline, and I made 2, I'm never sure how to pronounce this word, Cleoquat toques. It's I believe it's tin can knits pattern. Again, that's in my Ravelry pages. I made 2 of those for my nephew Miller and for his father, my brother-in-law Phil. Those were in inverse colors so that they're, you know, fraternal twins hats. And then the last hat I made that I don't have to show is the Lappi, L-A-P-P-I, which I just made from some of the leftover yarn from Miller and Phil's hats, and I think I gave that to, took that to my daughter for my grandson again, who has a fascination with hats right now. So, so I did finish almost all the knitting I intended to do for Christmas, except I did not finish the chipmunk that I had planned to knit for my grandson Alden to go with the Joanna Johnson book that I gave him, Henry's Hat. I showed you on a previous episode Henry's hat that I made for him, so he got the hat in the book. My intent right now is to make the chipmunk for his birthday in May when he'll be 2, and maybe he'll appreciate it more. I don't know. I just didn't get around to finishing. It wasn't something that, quite honestly, that I was really motivated to finish for whatever reason. Just didn't feel like knitting on a stuffy. So hopefully I will get it finished for May. But that's the only thing that I intended to finish for Christmas that I did not actually get finished. One other item that I do not have with me that I will also insert a picture of that is also a verdict is the I showed you in a previous episode my Dolores stuffed sheep from the Franklin Habit pattern. And as I think I have mentioned before, Dolores has outfits that you can order from Webs. I have ordered all of the outfits so far, And as I'll talk about a little bit later, I'm trying to get those knit up. So I did get one of them knit, and that is Dolores's Huggy Hygge. How do you pronounce that word? Hygge, which is the, I think, Norwegian or Danish word for comfort or something like that. Snuggly, comfort. It's really popular in knitting patterns. Anyway, the pattern for Dolores's Huggy Hygge Winter Accessories, which is a colorwork hat and a scarf. I did complete that. Again, I have more details on my Ravelry project page. I did not do the scarf as written. I've got some comments about that on my Ravelry page about why I did not do that. I instead did a basic just 2-color brioche, and that pattern was done in Valley Yarn Superwash Sport in a light blue and a white. Again, needle size and all of that is on my Ravelry project page, and I will also insert a picture of that. Here as well. But Dolores lives at my office, and so as soon as I finish her outfits, I usually take those to my office as well, so that as the mood hits me, I can switch her outfits out. Not that she has that many yet knitted. So anyway, let me get on to some verdicts that I can actually show you that I have here with me. The first two are verdicts that I actually finished a while ago, but I was not able to show you until now. And those are the patterns that are for the Carolina Fiber Fest Craft Along. Carolina Fiber Fest is an event in Raleigh, North Carolina, March 22nd and 23rd. I've mentioned before that I'm on the board for that and help out with that. And this year we have both a crochet pattern and a knitting pattern for the Craft Along. So whether or not you're planning to attend, I hope you will join us in that. Those patterns are available on our website, which is carolinafiberfest.org. And if you go to, at the top where all the links are, where it says Craft Along, I think it says CFF Craft Along is what the header says. If you go there, then you can download both of those patterns for free. Excuse me. And both designers have created Ravelry project pages, but right now those patterns are not downloadable on Ravelry. You have to follow the link from the project page to our website to download the pattern to get it for free. After a couple of weeks after the event, those patterns will revert to the designer, and at that point they may make them available to download on Ravelry, either free or for cost. That is up to them at that point. But if you want to ensure that you get the pattern for free, then you need to go to our website. So anyway, I was a test knitter for both patterns, and the first one I'm going to show you is our crochet pattern. This is the Carolina Chevron Cowl, and it was designed by Jennifer Rosenfield. Yeah, Rosenfield. And this is, again, crochet in a chevron pattern. The yarn I used is Twist Fiber Studio Haywood Worsted in the Soul Surfer colorway. And this is just a plain, it's not plain, but simple, close around the neck cowl. If you are a not super experienced crocheter, as am I, this was not a difficult pattern to follow, in my opinion. It does also have a chart, which I am a dedicated chart knitter when it comes to knitted patterns, but I have not quite mastered the art of reading crochet charts. But I appreciate patterns like this, which give me both the written and the charted, so I can kind of learn, because to me that's the way, so I can look at the written instructions and see the chart and try to figure out how that all works. So anyway, the pattern does also have instructions for stitch count if you would like to make this, you know, a little bit longer hanging down. I am not typically a close fitting cowl wearer. I prefer the little bit longer that I can then double over if I want it close. But since I was test knitting this, I did it exactly as the pattern was written, because that's the purpose of a test knit. So if you are a crocheter and not a knitter, or if you are both and you just want to do something crochet, I would encourage you to go download the Carolina Chevron Cowl. And it's not a, it is, I would also mention, the pattern is also written in 4 weights of yarn. So there are instructions in the pattern for everything from fingering up to bulky weight yarn. So you can pretty much do it in whatever yarn you have on hand that you decide you want to be a cowl. The second verdict, which is a little older that I want to show you, is the knit pattern for Carolina Fiber Fest. This pattern is called the Fiber Friends Shawl, excuse me, and it is designed by Corey Eichelberger. Corey, I think that's the way you pronounce your name. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. Corey Eichelberger. You may know her. She has got several. She's to me, a relatively well-known designer. She has a book out. And I should have looked up what the book is beforehand. Root something. I'm sorry, I can't remember. I can't remember the name of the book, but I will try to look it up and insert that here. She is iRock Knits on Instagram and Ravelry. And this is a DK weight shawl that is done with about 2 skeins of DK weight. It is a sort of narrower, elongated shawl, which for North Carolina, if you live in North Carolina, you know is perfect. We don't, DK weight shawls are wonderful, but it doesn't get but so cold for so long in North Carolina. So to me, this is the perfect weight. It's the perfect shape and weight because, one, if you don't want to wear it as a shawl, I like to do this, and I'll show you the details of it in a minute. You could do it more as a cowl or a scarf. But it's also just wide enough to wear and it's just, with my hoodie on, it's going to be hard to show, to wear, you know, in the spring when you just, maybe if you're wearing sleeveless or something, you just want a little something on your shoulders that's not really heavy or bulky, but gives you some warmth. Anyway, this is a textured shawl that goes through several different texture patterns. Before I show you that, let me tell you, I did this in Twist Fiber Studio, Cumberland DK in the Girl at the Rock Show colorway. I will say this probably would be a little bit better in a more solid or tonal colorway, but since it was a test knit and we were kind of on a short time frame, this was what I had enough DK weight in the same color to do. And I think it works. I mean, you can see the texture very well in person. It just doesn't translate as well on the screen. But I will show you some of the texture. You've got kind of a light cabled, and then you have I think she calls this a broken rib, but no, I can't remember what she called that pattern, but this part's my favorite. It's kind of a twisted, it's like a twisted stitch. I'm not one of those people that hates twisted stitches. And then you've got kind of a rib look. You go back to the twisted stitch, back to the rib look, back to the twisted stitch, and back to the little cables. So it is knit from starting at one narrow end, increasing to the width, and then decreasing again to the other narrow end, which creates kind of just a small little shallow crescent shape shawl. But anyway, it is a fun knit because the textures keep changing, which to me helps keep it interesting. Because it's DK weight, it does not take a super long time, in my opinion, to knit. Excuse me. But anyway, so I encourage you to check it out. Again, either one of the patterns, either the knit pattern or the crochet pattern, do both. If you are coming to Carolina Fiber Fest and you make one or both of the patterns, please be sure to bring it or wear it. We will have buttons to give out for anybody who participates in the craft along and shows us their object. Even if it's not quite finished, you know, you can bring it on the needles. We'll give you credit for attempting it. But even if you're not able to come to the event, you know, participate in the craft along anyway. We do have a group on Ravelry for Carolina Fiber Fest, and I have started a thread there if you like to comment or have questions. And I'm sure that both Corey and Jennifer, the designers, if you have particular questions, we'll be happy to try to answer those as well. Excuse me. So on to a little bit more recent verdicts. I believe I told you in the last episode that I had an advent calendar from Suburban Stitcher, and I'm going to show you more about that in a little bit. But also, my friend Martha and I kind of swapped our own advent calendars this year from minis that we created for each other. And so I didn't, leading up to Christmas, I really only got around to dealing with the one from Suburban Stitcher that I had bought. But after Christmas, I then opened up the one that Martha had given me. And I didn't do it day by day. I opened up however many I got to that day. So it took me less than 24 days, but I waited until I had used one skein on this project I'm getting ready to show you before I open the other one. Anyway, so I did the Adventurer cowl using the minis in the Advent calendar that Martha had given me. Excuse me. The Adventurer cowl is a pattern by Amba O'Brien. She also has an Adventurer wrap, which I had actually started with my Suburban Stitcher minis and then decided I didn't really like the whole thing. But anyway, the cowl was more my speed, and I had decided to do something else with my Suburban Stitcher minis, which again I'll show you in a minute. So when I got around to opening up Martha's Advent calendar, I decided to do the Adventurer cowl with this. So it's a kind of a chevron on the bias. Well, it's, yeah, I guess it is knit on the bias because you are increasing and decreasing as you go. But I apologize for all the coughing. Anyway, I knit this on a US 4 3.5 millimeter. Oh, I didn't mention, I'm sorry. On the Fiber Friends shawl, I knit that on a US 9 5.5 millimeter. That was DK weight. On the Carolina Chevron cowl, which was worsted weight, I crocheted that with a 5 millimeter hook, which is an H hook if you're a crocheter and go by the lettering. Anyway, so back to the Adventurer cowl. I knit this on a US 4 3.5 millimeter. I do not know what yarns these are. Martha had numbered them 1 through 24 for me and had kind of set up kind of a light to dark, so I just kind of followed that along and knit next with whatever I got. So it started with the white was the first color and progressed down. And then it got darker until you come back to where the white joined again. So I really like the fact that it actually kind of ended up, I can't get far enough back to get the whole thing in. There we go. Light on one side and kind of dark on the other. So, you know, that I can wear it like this and have light and dark, but when I wrap it around, I can decide, you know, if I want it darker or wider, or, you know, you can play with color and the way it fits on you a little bit. This is the pretty much the exact length and shape of cowl that I like. I like to be able to, you know, just wear it as like a decorative if I just want something, if I want to wear a plain colored shirt and add a pop of something, you know, to it, but be able to wrap it around up closer to my neck if I want to wear it for warmth. So again, that is the Adventurer cowl by Amba O'Brien. My next verdict is actually something that was started intended to be a bigger project and is now not going to be. One of the things that I tend to do at the end of each year, and I did this year, is kind of assess my projects that are on my needles, particularly the ones that I have not touched in a while, and decide, you know, do I still want this project? Do I want to keep working on it? And last episode I introduced you to Dismissal and showed you the portion of the boxy that I had started that I was frogging. One of the other projects that had been on my needles for a while is a scrap blanket project that I called my bandwagon blanket. You may remember a few years ago, I think it was Mason Dixon Knitting had the barn raising square blanket or something like that. And a lot of people started it, and a lot of my friends started it, and I jumped on the bandwagon, so I called it my bandwagon blanket. I was actually using the pattern called Sock Yarn Square by Shannon Geddes. Anyway, I started this back in 2015, and I couldn't tell you the last time I touched it. So I pulled it out and realized I had 16 squares, and just decided that I was never going to make enough squares for this to amount to any sizable blanket, even a lap blanket really for the couch. So what I did is I seamed them all together, and I just found an end I didn't trim. Seamed them all together, and then I crocheted a hot pink border around it. And it is pink because my youngest niece, Caroline, is all about all things pink. And so I am going to give this to her. She has a Pooh Bear. She is 7. She has a Pooh Bear that she loves and that goes everywhere she can take him. And so I decided this would be the perfect size for Pooh to have a blanket. So I don't remember what most of these yarns are. Sorry. I can tell you that one is Quarry Fibers, Carolina Fiber Girls colorway from Socktober a couple of years ago, I think. But see if I can get, there's, trying to see what I'm showing you. So anyway, 16 squares. I just put them together in an order that I thought was somewhat appealing. No real, you know, I've got a self-stripings going diagonal and kind of greenish ones going the other diagonal, and the rest of them kind of went wherever they looked best to me at the time. But and then the border, I did just a single crochet around, and then I did a double crochet in each single crochet, so it just gives it some more width to it. Just something to bring it all together a little bit, and again add a little bit more pink because I believe that Caroline would wear every single thing she could pink if she could do it. So I knew the pink would make her happy. So that is that was knit. The squares on that were knit on a US 1 2.25. And again, like I said, it's not that I didn't really, I mean, I enjoyed them. I started them at the time. Honestly, I think when I started it, I was not as much of a sock knitter, and I started it thinking that those little squares would be really good portable projects to like tote around in my purse, because you could, you know, you were knitting them individually. But yeah, I don't think I've made one in over a year or more. So I just decided it was never going to happen. Anyway, flip a page on my notes here, sorry. And then the last knitting finished object that I have is a pair of socks. You have not seen these before. These are just my regular vanilla toe-up sock with Fish Lips Kiss heel on a US 0 2.0 millimeter needle. The yarn is Desert Vista Dye Works in the Times Square colorway. I cast these on New Year's Day and just finished them this week. I have decided 2 years ago I did the Desert Vista Dye Works monthly sock. It's not really a club, but it's she has a, I guess it's a sock knit along. You do a pair of socks every month, but you have to start it and finish it within the month. So you have to start January, anytime in January, you have to finish it in the end of January. And it's kind of a rewards program, I guess. If you make a pair every month for 6 months, you get a free skein of yarn of any of her colorways of your choosing. If you make a pair of socks for every month for 12 months, then at the end of the year you get a special colorway that she creates for the people who finish the year that is not available otherwise to anyone else. She also does a thing on Instagram as well that you can either just do Ravelry or you can do Instagram or both. I do both, where if you use a certain hashtag when you post on Instagram, for every certain number of posts on Instagram, she has little smaller prizes throughout the year. They're usually little notions or minis or things like that, depending on, you know, the more posts you have, the better the prize, or the more, I guess, valuable or significant the prize. So anyway, I did this in 2017 and found it motivating and really enjoyed it. I took a break in 2018 because I felt like that was all the socks I knit, but I discovered in 2018 I really didn't knit as many socks, and I kind of miss it. So I've decided to join again for 2019. I have plenty of Desert Vista Dye Works yarn. And anyway, so these are the January ones. This is called the colorway is called Times Square, which I thought was appropriate for a New Year's Day cast on. And I can't remember if I showed you these sock blockers last time. I got them. I can't remember if I got them before the last podcast or since the last podcast, my Dragonfly sock blockers, and I forgot to look up the name of the vendor on Etsy, but I will try to remember to do that and insert that here. I love Dragonflies, I think I've mentioned before, and so I just saw these and really wanted a pair. So those are my last knitting verdict. Couple more things. Excuse me. I did a little bit of spinning this week, and so I wanted to show you this. Oh, it matches my sweatshirt. This is from Hillside Farms. Hillside Farms is a vendor at Carolina Fiber Fest. Carolyn is also on the board with me. But I needed to I haven't spun, I don't think, in a couple months. So I was trying to get something to get back in the groove. And this was already in kind of a pencil roving, so I knew it would be a little bit faster to spin just because I didn't have to do as much drafting and stuff. And I also did it on my Hanson, did it kind of a semi-woolen spun, which is a little bit faster. And also I need to practice my woolen spinning more, and did it kind of the end result I think is going to be about a DK weight. I have not had a chance to wash this yet because I literally just finished plying it this morning. So it is a 80% Cormo, 20% silk blend. The Cormo is from their sheep. I do know that. I'm assuming that they had the mill blend the silk in. The colorway is Caribbean, or Caribbean, if that's the way you say it. I can't get it. It's showing very blue. There is definitely some green in there too, but my phone does not want to pick that up. So, but anyway, I got about 240 yards of a 2-ply out of the 4 ounces. And I'm not sure what that will be once I get it washed and see how much, if any, it plumps up and what weight it actually ends up being. Right now, like I said, I would say it's probably about a DK weight. But it may plump up closer to worsted once it's washed. I'm not sure. I can't. It's been a while since I've spun any Cormo, so I'm not sure how much that's going to plump. And then the last verdict that I wanted to show you is not knitting related at all, but it's actually a sewing project. And I made these for my closest knitting girlfriends for Christmas, although they didn't get them until this past week. Peggy, I believe you have gotten yours by now, although I haven't heard. If you have not, turn away. Don't listen to me describe this. Or your surprise is ruined. It's not a huge surprise. But anyway, so enamel pins have become a very popular thing. A lot of people are buying them. A lot of people put them on their knitting bags, particularly the fringe field bags. I have one of those and was putting my pins on there, but quite honestly, I got too many and it got too heavy. So I decided I wanted something to display my pins. So I made just a little canvas banner. Not too difficult. Even my limited limited sewing skills. I just basically, but as you can tell, it's not exactly even. This is lower than that. I'm not a perfectionist. I basically kind of drew out a template of about the size I wanted and drew it out on canvas. And I just did double-sided, 2 pieces of canvas and sewed them together to basically make a big pocket, and then folded over the end around a dowel. So, relatively simple. But now I have something to put all my enamel pins on. This right here is, I think, all of my enamel pins. I may pull one off occasionally and put it on a bag or something if I'm feeling so inclined. I have them kind of organized. I mean, like up here I've got shops, pins. Those are shops. These are kind of events. Maryland Sheep Wool and Saf, Carolina Fiber Fest. These tend to be from podcasters. These are just craft related ones that are kind of general to crafting. And then I have a couple that are non-knitting related, about books or reading. Ice cream. Everything is ice cream. Or life is ice cream. What does this say? I think it says, without ice cream, there would be darkness and chaos. So, anyway, so that was my little sewing project that I did. And I just saw a text message pop up from Peggy that she had got her gifts, but apparently she's had the bug too. So, anyway, that was a little non-yarn related, but somewhat tangentially linked project that I finished. So that was all the verdicts, and I see I'm already 35 minutes in. If you want to take a break, pause, get something to drink, make sure you got your knitting. This one might be a little while, but hopefully not too long. Anyway, so let's move on to quarters in session. And I am not, I'm actually not going to show you everything that I have worked on since our last podcast, because a couple of the projects are things that I've just cast on to get cast on so that I can work on when I can. A couple of them I've cast on and done a decent amount of progress, but it's not real exciting to look at yet, and I know that it's long-term enough that I will have it next time. So, but I wanted to show you first my sock yarn blanket, which I did show you the last episode because I was getting ready to start doing all my Advent minis from Suburban Stitcher. And so I did add, and I have pins on all the ones I've done, but I think some of them have fallen off, so I may not have a pin on every square. I started here with my Suburban Stitcher Advent minis, and there were 24 of them. So what I did is I went, see if I can show this, 8 across this, and then 8 across the next row up, and 8 across the next row up, because I kind of wanted them to all be in a similar place on the blanket. The other reason was I did not quite have the first row that I was starting on that side finished all the way across the blanket. And the width across my blanket is only 19 squares, so that would have not quite gotten all 24 of them. So I decided to do 3 rows of 8. And I do not remember all the names, but I did create a stash entry for my Suburban Stitcher minis, and that is linked to my sock yarn blanket project page if you want to go see an individual picture of each of the colors, also in order, also with a list of the names for each of them. Diane, who is Suburban Stitcher, did hers based on Christmas movies. So I know that one was Your Mean One, Mr. Grinch. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to remember all of them. So I got those 24 done. Let's see if I can show you a little bit better. So, and that ended there. So that is the, that is the end of the Suburban Stitcher. And then I also did some more. I have subscribed recently to the Row 1 Yarn minis, just for, I think I'm just doing it for a couple months. I got one before Christmas that was like an lace yarn, so those I've all put in here. And again, I do not know all the colorways. As you can see, this is a little less concentrated because I was trying to fill out this row and go across. So I haven't counted, but I think I got like 35 or 36 that I did. Maybe 37. I'll have to go back and count. I did not count how many there were. I should have done that. So anyway, so I did pretty much do at least one a day between December 1st and December 24th. I pretty much tried to make sure if I didn't, even when I was sick, if I did no other knitting that day, I did do my sock yarn blanket square. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I started to do my sock yarn blankets. This blanket, my squares only take like 3 grams of yarn, like 8 yards or something, and maybe 10. I can't remember. I measured it at one point for Stash Dash, 8 or 10 yards. And of course, my minis from Diane were 20-gram minis, so I had a substantial amount of yardage left over from each one. So my original thought was, as I mentioned before, I started that adventurer wrap, and for some reason I just wasn't feeling it. And also about that time, I jumped on another bandwagon. So you may or may not have seen the Northeasterly blanket pattern, which is a pattern by Melissa Alexander Loomis. And so I decided to start one of those with my Advent minis. Let me see, pull the right needle out here so I don't pull anything off the needle. But I also decided I did not need another fingering weight scrap yarn project because in addition to the sock yarn blanket, I have the crochet one that I'm doing. I have the striped miter square one that I'm doing. I have the one that I call the true scrap blanket, which is literal, varying degrees of width of like literal scraps, you know, less than a couple of yards, less than 10 yards probably. I think that's all of them. Anyway, I have plenty of fingering weight scrap blankets. So I decided to do this one DK weight, but of course my minis are all fingering weight, so I'm doing it either fingering weight held doubled or DK weight. And I decided that I would let the length of the 24 minis from Suburban Stitcher dictate the length of the blanket. I'm sorry, and I've got, if you're not familiar with the pattern, you just do strips of color, but you can have more than one strip going at a time, to the point that the strip next to it at least is. And so I've got yarn tangled up around here. I'm trying to untangle so that I can show you this without pulling anything off of needles. I am using a US4 3.5 millimeter needle for this, and I'm actually just using double points because each strip is only yay wide. This is one strip. So I started off with the Suburban Stitcher Advent, and you will see my first 3 colors, this edge row, I did really long. You know, I was trying to use a significant amount of the yarn because this is fingering weight held double, and as I mentioned, they were 20-gram minis. So in Diane's, I think Diane's stock weight yarn is a 460 or 463 yards per 100 grams. So 20-gram minis is what, 90 yards each? And I only used 8 to 10 on my sock yarn blanket. But I quickly realized that if I did all 24 this long, that my blanket would end up like 20 feet long. So I started shortening them after that and did a little less of each colorway. So I did finish every day that I did a sock yarn square on my blanket. I tried to also do this. Some days I got a little bit behind and had to catch up. I didn't keep up as well with this one, but I did finish at least getting the Suburban Stitcher Advent ones in. I think by like the 25th or 26th I got this finished to the end. And I think I measured this at one point, but now I can't remember what it was. I think it's still 7 or 8 feet long is what it's going to be. And so then I mentioned the row 1 yarn. So I started this stripe as the row 1 yarn minis with the lichen and lace. Again, starting with And you can do these chevrons, these little wedges, however long you want. So you could do this truly scrap and have 2 rows or 3 rows or whatever. But for right now, since I've got minis with a decent amount of yarn, I'm doing them. Pardon me. I'm doing them about this size. You know, whatever I feel like. If I like the color a lot, I sometimes do it a little bit longer. You know, or if it's color I don't have as much of in there, I'll do it a little longer. And here ends the Lichen and Lace. This one is the first of the next month of Rowan yarn that I got, which is Yarn Baby, I think is the dyer. I think this ends... I know this one is Yarn Baby. I can't remember if this one is Yarn Baby or Lichen and Lace. But anyway, so I'm going to do this strip of nothing but the Rowan Yarn minis, at least until I get to the end, or until I decide to stop subscribing to the Rowan Yarn, and then I'll finish it up with the other minis. And then I have started one more. One more that is actually DK weight. So I had some DK weight yarn left over from some of the hats. This is Calories Don't Count on Your Birthday from Queen City Yarns in their Bitterville DK base. So this strip will be all DK weight, probably. Unless I run out of DK and decide I need to do double fingering. The weight is very similar between the DK and the fingering held doubled. So, and it's a blanket, so it doesn't really matter if it's not quite exactly the same weight. So, and some of the fingering weight yarns held double are going to be a little bit different because fingering weight yarns are also not the same. You know, 80-20 is a little thicker than 75-25 and everything. So, anyway, so that is my latest bandwagon, the Northeasterly blanket. I did work on this very consistently through December. I have not worked on it quite as much since then. But hopefully, where's my needle? Hopefully it will not languish too long. So, again, I'm trying to get in the habit of when I add a square to my sock yarn blanket, going ahead and at least starting a chevron on the Northeasterly blanket, so that if for some reason I don't finish a chevron when I do the next sock yarn square blanket, then I have to go over and finish the chevron, at least start the next one. So we'll see how that works. And while we're on blankets, I have yet another Court in Session blanket. This one is not a scrap blanket. This one is actually for a purpose. My administrative assistant, secretary, whatever the proper term is now, my friend at work is pregnant and is having her second baby in May. Yes, May. She is due in May. She just had her first baby last February. So she's doing it very close together, back to back. She had a little boy last February, and I made him a blanket that she really liked, and she was very appreciative, so she is very knit-worthy. So I have started a blanket for, and she's having a little girl this time. And since she would be born in May, which is a little bit warmer month than going into the summer, I decided to make it out of cotton. And so this is, there's no, I'm just doing a basic chevron pattern. I've done chevron enough that I kind of knew how to do it. So I haven't really, you're not using an actual pattern. The yarn is Universal Yarn Cotton Supreme, which I bought at Bella Flotti in Southern Pines the day after Christmas. And I decided to do kind of a rainbow. You know, I'm using pink and kind of an apricot instead of a bright orange, yellow, green, blue. And I'm getting ready to start the purple. So, and I'm just doing, I did a little bit of white border. I'm doing basically one row, you know, one stockinette row front and back of white between each color. And I'm guessing, I'm basically just going to do what I can do. I have not actually weighed the balls of yarn since I've finished, you know, once I finish the purple, I'm going to weigh and see how much I used for one repeat. I'm guessing I'm going to get 3 repeats of the color, but I'm aiming just for like a stroller size, you know, car seat size blanket, because that's the size I did for her older brother, and my friend Kim said it was very useful and handy. So I am knitting that on a US 7 4.5 millimeter needle. So a couple of Court and Session that are not blankets. I started another Dolores outfit. This is Dolores Sensuous, I can't say that word, Sensuous EWE caftan and turban. And I have just started on the caftan. This is a pattern by Franklin Habit. It is Valley Yarns Huntington is the yarn, in light gray heather and harvest orange. I'm doing this on a US 4 needle, 3.5 millimeter. All the Dolores patterns right now are only kits that you can buy through Webs, which is yarn.com. I would imagine eventually maybe that the patterns will be available just as pattern only, but for now the only way you can get them is buying the kit through Webs. So this is the back of her caftan, and it will kind of come out, it's like the back, and it comes over the shoulders, and it's an open front. And then there's a turban to go for when she goes to the spa, I guess. So I've just started on that, and plan to hopefully have that finished by the end of the month, which again I'll talk about a little bit more later when I talk some about my my 2019 goals. And then the last Court and Session that I'm going to show you, excuse me, is the Mystery Knit Along that I'm doing right now. This is called Young, Scrappy, and Cozy by Mary Annarella. So if you are doing this Mystery Knit Along and have not finished through Clue 3 and don't want to have a surprise spoiled, please turn away. I am making this out of Miss Babs in a Yowza trio that I bought from Saf this year. The colors are Cordovan, Oyster, and Topaz. I believe the Cordovan is the green, the Oyster I know is the gray, and the Topaz is the kind of burgundy color. So this is a cowl. And I probably could have done with a little bit more contrast between my green and burgundy. But again, I had this trio, which is the kind of the yarn the pattern was written for, and I already had it. I wanted to use it. I didn't want to buy a different, I didn't want to buy any more yarn because I'm trying to use up more of what I got now. Anyway, so the pattern started off as like a triangle, you know, triangle shawl with the garter tab cast on in this way, and you knit, you know, back and forth, increasing. And then this last clue, we have actually joined and are knitting, still knitting back and forth though because of this split in the front. Well, in what I think is the front. I don't really know. I thought my best guess was that we would somehow pick stitches up in here and fill that somehow. But now I'm wondering if maybe that split is not going to be like over the shoulder, and that with the yarn that's on the needles we will do something of a similar nature on this side so that it will go that way. Wait a minute, that way. So that it would then be diagonal stripes. I'm not sure. I am knitting this on a US 5 3.75 millimeter. Oh, this is, I forgot to show you bags, but I think all but, I'll show you this bag. This is my caftans in. This is a bag that my friend Peggy made with otters. I think I showed you this last time because I had something else in it. This bag is a collaborative between the Fat Squirrel and Gail from Gail's Arts. Gail's Arts dyed the fabric, and then Amy Beth from Fat Squirrel made the bags. This was a pre-order thing that was back in the fall, so I don't believe you can get that anymore, but just kind of a fall leafy pretty bag. So anyway, I have done the pattern as written with one exception. The pattern is written to have some words. This is based on Hamilton, which I know that Hamilton is great and wonderful in this big, well-known thing. And I don't have anything against it. I just don't know much about Hamilton. I've heard some of the songs. I like some of the songs, but I have not really seen the show, and I don't know much about it. So I'm not all into Hamilton because I don't really know anything about it. So the pattern is written as you do the word work here. Get up here, we'll see. And then in this section on one side, as you do look around. And apparently those phrases are significant to the story of Hamilton, but I don't know exactly how. I chose not to do those because, one, they have no significance to me. And that's the main reason. The words had no significance to me, so I didn't want somebody to go, well, why does it say work in your cowl? I don't know. It has something to do with Hamilton. So I just did the patterning that was around the words, and which she gives as an option if you don't want to do the words. So when I did the first clue, it was down through here, and I was really wishing that I had kind of reversed my colors so that you could see that green on the burgundy better, but as you can see, as you go down, every color becomes the background color. So, it really wouldn't have mattered. But, like I said, I probably could have used a little more contrast between my red and my green. But, that's okay. I like it. I like the colors together. I'm enjoying it. Each clue has been a decent amount of knitting without being something that's going to take me all week. One of the things I love about Mystery Knit-Alongs personally is that you get a clue, you knit the clue, you can set the project aside without any guilt of feeling like you should be working on it until the next clue comes out. And so as long as the clues are appropriately spaced, even if you have some other project that you feel obliged to work on to get finished, you have something that you can knit on a little bit and then easily set aside to work on whatever it is you feel like you should be working on until the next clue comes out and you pick it up again. So that's one of the reasons I really enjoy mysteries. And I always tend to try to go into mysteries with the idea of, even if I don't like the end result, somebody I know will, and I can give it away. So, you know, there have been a couple times where, yeah, the end was not something that was me personally to my taste. The colors are usually okay to my taste because I pick out the colors. But you never know. You know, you usually get, in this case, we were told it's going to be cowl. You know, usually they know it's going to be a shawl. Sometimes if it's a shawl, they'll tell you it's crescent shaped or triangle shaped or rectangular or something like that, just to give you an idea. They will usually show you what yarn they use to give you some color ideas, things like that. But, yeah, it's just knitting. And if you hate it, rip it out. So, excuse me. So that is all the quarters in session that I'm going to show you. Like I said, I have a couple other projects I've started. I am knitting a bridesmaid shawl for my friend Peggy's daughter's getting married at Easter, and I'm helping her by knitting one of the shawls for the bridesmaids. That is in lace weight yarn, and I'll show you that probably next time. Right now it's just stockinette and doesn't look like much. I've also started a brioche poncho that my friend Martha designed that I am doing out of hand spun on one side and Miss Babs Yowza on the other side. And I've gotten a couple inches done on that, but so far it's not where I can stretch it out enough for you to really see the effect of the brioche, so I just didn't feel like it would be worth showing you, and I'm almost at an hour already, so, and not quite done. That is all the projects and stuff I'm going to show you, but I wanted to talk a little bit about 2019. It is 2019, believe it or not. I saw a meme on Facebook that was like, 1999 was 20 years ago. And I can very easily remember the whole 1999, oh, 2000, you know, Y2K, the computers are going to go haywire. Even more importantly, I was in high school when Prince's song 1999 came out, and at the time, 1999 seemed forever ago. I mean, excuse me, forever from then. So, yeah, so 2019, it's hard to believe that we're almost to 2020. So one of the things I like to do most years, there's been a couple years that I've like, nah, not doing any goals. I don't want any goals at all. But I like to set some goals for myself, both personally, but also in kind of my knitting and fiber crafting. And the great thing about the knitting and fiber crafting goals for me is that if I don't achieve them, there's no real consequence. It's not the end of the world. It's more just things I'd like to get done or that sort of stuff. If you're on Instagram, you may have seen a lot of people do the Make 9, where they pick 9 projects that may be knitting or crochet or sewing or whatever that they want to get done in a year. I really debated doing that this year, but I also tend to be more of a whatever I feel like doing at the time maker. And right now, there's a couple patterns I love that I really want to make, but by 6 months from now, when I could start them, I may not be as interested in them. So I really just didn't want to get that restrictive on myself and feel like I had not done something I really wanted to do. Anyway, so I just thought I'd share with you briefly what my 2019 goals are for my crafting, and that way you'll know, and as I show projects and things like that and talk about, this is one of my goals, it will make sense to you. So one of my goals, I showed you my finished pair of Desert Vista Dye Works socks for January, is to do those socks every year. Excuse me. When I did it in 2017, I was successful in doing it all 12 months. And so my practice with that is generally I try to get the sock cast on the first of the month, and then it travels around my pocketbook. And by about the middle of the month, I like to be close to turning the heel. That's kind of my marker. If by the middle of the month I'm not close to turning the heel, then I need to start putting some more time on them. So anyway, so I'd like to do the Desert Vista Dye why can I say that word? Desert Vista Dye Works knit along every month, and I am doing that both on Instagram and on Ravelry. I showed you a picture of the Dolores outfit that I have finished and the Dolores outfit that I am knitting. Thus far, there have been 6 Dolores outfits released. I have bought all of them. I have all of them, and until I did the hat and scarf, I had not knit any of them. So my goal right now is to get the 5 that I had in my possession at the beginning of the year, which was all of them except for the bikini, which just came out in January, and I just got. I want to get those 5 at least finished no later than March 31st. So in 3 months, that's about 2 a month. And my goal for January is I got the 1 and to get the caftan finished. And then going forward, to allow myself to continue to purchase them, I would like to knit anyone that I receive additionally within about 30 days of actually having it in my possession. They're usually pre-orders, so it's usually a couple weeks after order before it gets there. Kind of the exception that is going to be the bikini I've already gotten. I'm going to actually try to get it done by the end of March with the other 5, but if I don't, then in my mind, I kind of have 30 days after the end of March to knit that one. So, and that's just kind of my own. I love the little outfits. I think it's cute. Like I said, Dolores sits in my office, and it entertains me to change her outfit. She sits next to my giant sock monkey, and it's just something that entertains me. So, but I don't want to keep buying them and not knitting them. So I want to try to stay on top of those once I get caught up and everything. I would like to do 2 projects out of handspun. I've already cast one on in the poncho I just mentioned that I'll show you later. I'd like to do 2 projects out of lace weight, and I actually have 2 on the needles. The bridesmaid shawl I just mentioned is lace weight. And also the snowflake scarf that I showed you earlier in the fall is lace weight. And I do want to get back to that. I had set it aside for all the Christmas knitting and haven't really picked it back up yet. So hopefully I'll finish both of those. I enjoy knitting lace weight, and I have a lot of lace weight because there was a time where I knit a lot of lace weight. But I just haven't knit as much recently. And it's not because I don't like it. It's just because I keep getting, as Silly Fru would say, glamored by these other new patterns that come out, which aren't lace weight. There doesn't seem to be, there are certainly designers still putting out lace weight patterns, but they don't seem to be the it patterns. And as I've mentioned several times this podcast, I tend to jump on the bandwagon. I would like to spend more, so I'm going to try to spend at least 48 ounces of fiber this year. That is just 4 ounces a month. And I've already spun 4 ounces this month, so hopefully I'll spend more than that, but I would like to at least get 48 ounces. And then another thing I would like to do is spend at least 30 minutes a week doing a craft that is not knitting or crochet. That can be spinning, sewing. I have picked up so many crafts, and I want to do them all, but I have this mental block that I have to like have these huge blocks of time to do the other things, because I think in part because I'm just not as comfortable just picking them up and doing them. I have to kind of get back in the right brain space. But, you know, like I sewed these banners. I had to figure out how to rethread my sewing machine because I hadn't touched it in a couple months. And I'm just not an experienced enough sewist for that to be intuitive, the way I can just pick up knitting and knit. So, like I said, I have spinning, I have sewing, I have rug hooking, I have tatting, I have a tapestry loom, I have a rigid heddle cricket loom. I bought a dishcloth kit from Pearl Soho when I was in New York for my birthday in October that I want to do on the rigid heddle. I started learning last fall to do bobbin lace and had to stop my lessons because life just got too busy. So at some point I'd like to pick that back up again. Even if I can't pick up the lessons again until probably fall, given my anticipated work schedule, I'd at least want to dabble a little bit in practicing what I did learn, and so that I don't completely forget that. So so I'm really going to try this year every week to spend at least 30 minutes on something that is not knitting or crochet. And I don't do a lot of crochet, but I'm excluding that from the other craft just because I do crochet enough to pick it up and just do it a little bit. So I tend to do that a little more. Spinning, I can sit down and do just a few minutes at a time, but for some reason I don't. So, and I do want to spend more. So I am including that. If the 30 minutes I do is spinning instead of something else, then that will count. Unless I get to the point where that's the only other thing I'm doing, and then I may change that and make it have to be something else for my own mental goal to try to do some other things. Kind of cross stitch, that's the other one that I have. A couple years ago I kind of picked up kind of cross stitch again and started several projects that I really want to do, and I just never seem to pull it out and do 30 minutes on it. So anyway, so that is the goal of that, and the hope is that if I start and say I'm going to do 30 minutes of this, then I will actually do more than 30 minutes on it. I said this week I was going to spin for 30 minutes, and I ended up, doing the entire 4 ounces, which took me probably about 3 hours total in several bouts of spinning. So, and then the last goal is one that, I kind of say every year, but I need to get serious about. Excuse me. And that is to really try to cut back on the yarn purchases. I have a ton of yarn that is beautiful yarn that I love and I want to knit. And but yet I continue to find more and more beautiful yarn and buy it. And I've kind of, I've reached the point where it's starting to be a little bit overload, in the sense that, of course, I never need more yarn. But I have plenty of yarn, and most projects I want to make, I could probably come up with some yarn from my stash. So, on the other hand, I know myself, and I know if I say I am not buying any yarn at all, that I will break that in a heartbeat. That I will rebel against, can't buy anything or whatever. So my goal is really to just be more mindful and really consider my yarn purchases. Sorry. I have also, I've made a list of the events that I know that I will be attending this year, and that I know I will buy yarn at. I've also given myself permission, for lack of a better way to phrase it, to buy the Dolores outfits, so long as I continue to work on knitting them. If I have a gift certificate right now that some friends gave me for my birthday that I had to a local yarn shop that I have not gone and spent yet. Mainly because I kind of want to wait till I really want something, either for a specific project or there's something I know I really want before I go and spend it. So if it's not on that list, then, and even if it is on that list as far as an event goes, at the events I want to think harder about my yarn purchases and not purchase as much as I have purchased in the past. But it's ridiculous for me to say that I'm going to SAF and I'm not buying any yarn. It's just not going to happen. I'm not going to go to Carolina Fiber Fest and not buy any yarn. But I just want to think a little bit more about what I'm doing. I do track my yardage in and out every year, just for my own personal knowledge. Right now with my work, I tend to knit anywhere between 25,000 to 30,000 yards a year, which is not an insignificant amount, but I bring in a lot more than that, or at least I have the past few years since I started tracking. So I'm going to try to get those numbers closer to each other this year, but I'm not going to be so strict that I say, well, I can only buy what I put out or anything like that, because I just know the way my brain works, and I will rebel, and that won't happen. So that's the kind of broad goal for the year. So anyway, those are my 2019 goals. And again, that last one, that's why I wanted to use like the Yowza Trio that I had bought at SAF already for that mystery knit along that I'm doing. I'm trying to use the things I have. And the other thing I wanted to mention kind of towards that is I've also kind of gone through my library of patterns and favorites of patterns and my stash. One of the benefits of having all of my stash on Ravelry is I can do all this in Ravelry. And I have gone through and I have queued, in my queue, I have matched up patterns and yarn. So that if I get, where I just want to cast something on, I can go to my queue and see, oh, I wanted to do this pattern in this yarn, or this pattern in that yarn. And also a way to remember what I bought yarn for. But, and most of those, they're not wetted. In other words, it's not like I won't steal that yarn for something else. In most cases, there are a couple of things that I really know I do want that object out of that yarn eventually. It just, in some cases, it may be a sweater that, I haven't been in sweater knitting mode lately. So, but anyway, so that, I've put several things in my queue that I hope to get done. And I've tried to, list some things that I want to get done this year and everything. Anyway, so that's it for goals. The last thing is just calendar, just to kind of let you know where I'll be the next few months. I've already mentioned the Carolina Fiber Fest, which is March 22nd and 23rd. That is in Raleigh at the fairgrounds. That is in I think it's called the Kerr Building, Kerr. And something I'll have a little bit more detail on in the next episode. We actually got the opportunity to move to the Expo Center, which is a much bigger building that we have wanted to move to for a while. But the way the fairgrounds works, you have to lock into a weekend for a building. And so, that's your weekend every year. And that has not been available in the time of year that we wanted to do. But a few weeks ago, it became available for us to have the weekend before, which this year is the weekend of the 15th, 16th, 17th, I believe. We are not moving this year's event. This year's event, Carolina Fiber Fest, is still March 22nd and 23rd in the Kerr Building. Maybe it's the Scott Building. Go to our website. It'll tell you. I think it's the Kerr Scott Building. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's the Kerr Scott Building. That is still on. That is the event and everything. But in order to get the Expo Center, the bigger building, which if you go to the North Carolina State Fair is the one where they always sell the t-shirts in the front lobby, over past Dorton Arena, kind of on the other side of fairgrounds. We had to book it for this year for that weekend before the 15th, 16th. So we are going to be having something there that weekend. We have a board meeting tomorrow that we're going to discuss it more in detail. What I know about, and I'll provide more details later, and there will be more on the website. What I know right now is I believe we're doing a used equipment sale for fiber equipment. So if you have looms and spinning wheels and things like that that you want to sell. And I think we're also just going to do kind of a social knit-in type thing where people can come and knit, or if people want to come and learn to knit, there'll be people who might be willing to teach you. We were going to invite guilds to come, and gather and do whatever they want to do. I I don't believe, other than the used fiber equipment sale, it's not really going to be a selling opportunity. At least that is what I believe at the time. So it's not an opportunity if you didn't get into FiberFest as a vendor to come and vend. But if you are a knitter or you want to learn to knit or crochet or maybe even weave, you know, I think we're just going to do more of a social and used fiber equipment. So there will be something in the Expo Center that weekend that will be hosted by Carolina Fiber Fest. And going forward in future years, that will be our weekend for FiberFest, and we'll be in the Expo Center, which is a larger space. If you are coming to Carolina Fiber Fest, workshops are up on the website and available for registration. I would encourage you to go and look at those and sign up for some classes if you would like to. We have expanded our class space this year to the Ramada Inn across the street from the fairgrounds. It is literally kind of across Blue Ridge Road from the fairgrounds. There is a crosswalk if you go up to the light and cross over, and you have to come back down just a little bit. That it's walkable. But there's also parking over there if you want to drive. So some of the classes will be over there, which is going to has allowed us to have a few more classes this year. Some of the classes are still in the Carscott building as well. So, but if you sign up for a class, please pay attention to where your class is being hosted. It will either say Ramada 1, 2, 3, I think, are the 3 rooms, or it will say Carscott upstairs or Carscott downstairs, depending on what type of class it is. So I would encourage you to do that. Again, I mentioned the craft-alongs. Feel free to participate in those if you are so inclined. And other than that, mark your calendar and come see us and buy from our lovely vendors. There will be fiber and yarn, and I believe some vendors that sell equipment. I believe some rug hooking supplies. I know at least one vendor sells some knitting needles. Not sure if there are weaving equipment suppliers. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the vendor list is up on the website. The other event that I will be attending, and unfortunately it is the weekend before FiberFest when the social that I was just talking about is going to be held. So I will not be at the social event for FiberFest because I will be in the mountains at Carolina Fiber Frolic, the spring retreat. Registration for that is not quite open yet. I believe that Jan Smiley, who puts that on, is trying to finalize the details. Excuse me. But that will be the weekend of March 15th through 17th. Spring Frolic does have classes. I do know who the spinning instructor is, but I'm not sure that I'm at liberty to say that, so I'm not going to. I do not know who the knitting instructor or what other types of classes are going to be offered yet. So I will be attending that though. And so if you're interested in that, that is in Sapphire, North Carolina. Again, like I said, it's put on by Jan Smiley. It is hosted at the community center at the Sapphire Valley Resort. And most people stay at the Hampton Inn that is just across the road from Sapphire Valley. Or there is also an option where you can rent a condo if you would prefer more of a, you know, vacation type setting. I always do the hotel because everybody hangs out in the lobby at night after the community center closes at 9, so we all go hang out in the lobby of the hotel. But anyway, that's a fun retreat. It's a nice weekend in the mountains. Sapphire Valley is about an hour west of Asheville. And it's a lot of fun. So I would encourage you to look at that one. If you do go to that, you do get, I believe, if she does it the way she's done it the past couple of years, you do get one class with your registration, and then you can purchase additional classes. And she usually has some good instructors. The spinning instructor is very good. I know she's had her before, and I really enjoyed taking a class with her, and I will definitely be taking another class with her this time, probably. I guess it depends on who the knitting instructor is. Anyway, so those are the two events that I will be going to in the near future, and hopefully I will see you at one or both. If I do, please, I think I know most of you that watch this, but if I don't know you in person and you see me, please feel free to come up and introduce yourself. At Carolina Fiber Fest, I will definitely be there all day Saturday. I will probably be there most of the day Friday. I may have to work Friday morning, but I will probably be around and about most of the afternoon at least. So Anyway, and the only thing, last thing I will say is, excuse me, again, my apologies for almost 2 months without a podcast. I know y'all were sitting and waiting with bated breath. But I don't like to go this long because, for one, it means that I end up with an hour and 20-minute long podcast. Hopefully it won't be quite that long by the time I edit a little bit. But we are, as I mentioned in my first episode, I work for the North Carolina General Assembly. This is an odd number year, which means that we have what we refer to as a long legislative session, which starts in January and will probably go until at least June or July, possibly later. There's no set end date. So beginning probably about mid-February, my work schedule will get very hectic, and I will probably be working quite a few hours, many weeks. So my goal right now is to try to podcast at least once each calendar month between now and, say, June or July. Ideally, I would like to podcast about every 2 weeks, but obviously that hasn't been happening even since I started. So I'm hoping to go, like I said, I hope to do at least once a calendar month, which in some instances might mean I do it early in February, but not till the end of March. I just don't know. I will try to fit in one when I have some content to show you, but not as much content as I had today, and to, not go any longer, too long, so that you lose interest or forget I'm here. So anyway, like I said, hopefully I will be back in February sometime. And again, feel free to message me on Ravelry, or you can direct message me on Instagram. I'm bad about noticing the messages on Instagram, so I tend to see the ones on Ravelry faster, just because I notice that my little bob is jumping up and down. But either one, Legal Eagle on Ravelry or Criminally Creative Podcast on Instagram. And I will be happy to talk with you or answer any questions. And if you would please go introduce yourself on the introductions thread in the Ravelry group, I would certainly appreciate it, and I will be happy to welcome you next time. So anyway, I hope you have a great month until I see you again. Talk to you later. Bye, y'all.